We call to order. And then first one is the roll call.
Vice Chair Woodson,
Here.
Commissioner Herr,
Here.
Commissioner Rana, Commissioner St. John,
Here.
Commissioner Walton, Commissioner Jacobson.
Here.
You have quorum.
Thank you very much. Next up is a moment of silence and a pledge of allegiance. Would somebody like to lead the pledge today? Okay, thank you. So, a moment of silence. You actually have to send it to the other side so we can balance out the audience.
So,
All right, next up, we have special announcements and communications from the floor. This time, if there anything public would like to speak about that's not on the agenda, please feel free to come up. You have a maximum of 4 minutes. Both looking at me like, nope, not a thing. We're on the agenda. Okay. Do you have anything on your side? All right. Moving past special announcements and communications from the floor. Next up is the ex parte communication disclosures. Anything that has occurred since the last meeting that any of the commissioners would like to discuss or raise up for ex parte communications? Wow, this is going quick. All right. 2, 3, 4, 5 items done. All right. Next up is our consent agenda tonight. We have a couple things on the consent agenda to go through. The first one is to review of the planning commission meetings from April 13th. If I get a chance to review those or have any comments on the meeting notes. It's like, no, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
I move that we approve the meeting minutes of April 13th.
Oh. Pardon me.
we've noted that. Thank you.
Other than that change, I don't think it changes the motion in the second.
Second.
Okay. All right, we can take we don't need to take a roll call. We can just approve.
During COVID, we were doing roll call for the benefit of the audience. It seems to be a good protocol to continue.
Okay, we can do that.
So,
Can you? Please?
Chair, Vice Chair Woodson,
Yes.
Commissioner Herr,
Yes.
Commissioner St. John,
Yes.
Commissioner Walton, Commissioner Jacobson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thanks. Okay, next up, we have special presentations. And we have a great special presentation tonight from the Dunes. If you could also address just a small one of how long First Avenue may be closed. As part of that.
I'd be happy to.
So Doug, go ahead and speak into the microphone as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and thanks, Don. So Doug Yount, I'm project director in the Dunes project. You all known me for probably a long time, been in the region for a while and at this project for quite a while, and it's really an exciting time. I also, in the audience here is Don Hofer, our Vice President, Community Development in Northern California. For any questions that I may not be able to answer. So what we really want to do here is just to give an update of really of what's under construction and what's going forward. This isn't the history of the dunes and all that project, but it's really about what's happening. And like I said, this is a real exciting time for Marina and a really exciting time for the region and for the dunes project. Things are really coming together, and it's a fun time. I think it was yesterday. We had one of our conference rooms over in those trailers that are in front of the Cinemark, in front of the theater, and it was completely filled with project staff and project managers, construction managers. It was a full house, which is really, really fun to see when that happens in a project. Because as you know, I like to use a saying that says large development projects are like roller coasters, large periods of anticipation, punctuated by moments of exhilaration and nausea.
Hilarious.
Oh, I have to click on this, I think, so I have to do it. Here we go. So we'll talk a little bit about development under construction and then future development. And it's all coming together well. So this here, if you can see, and I believe you can see on your monitors as well, commissioners, is every blue star you see is a piece of the Dunes project. This is from the specific plan, the land use plan. What's happening there? There's construction currently happening. It's either under development currently happening in a number of different ways, and I'll explain as we go forward. As you can see, all phases are being addressed here in the under construction as we speak. Up in the top is or starting with number 1 is the city park. That's the Hilltop Park. There's literally 289 single family housing units that not all are under construction. Some have been built, but in those 2 areas, in phase 2 west and in phase 2, it's going to work. But anyway, in phase 2 west, which is the number 2, and phase 2 east is also number 2. Those are the number of homes, most of which are on the east have been constructed, and more coming on the west. In the future, we're doing infrastructure there now. 140 apartment below market rate apartment units, and both the area you can see number 3, in both off of 2nd Avenue to the south, and also off of Imgen Parkway up in the corner near California. We also have blight removal. There was 204 barracks have been removed down in area 4 from all of phase 2 or phase 3, and both phase 3 commercial as well as our office, as well as phase 3 residential. We also have a home 2 suites, number 5 there, that's under construction, a promenade mixed use area, which I'll talk more about in this presentation, and number 6, and a hotel resort complex, number 7 on the hill. We're getting ready for infrastructure and construction. You can see there's been quite a bit of work that was completed there recently. So building removal demolition, this was a little while ago, a few months ago, because all of those buildings are out of there now. I wanted to just see if this link works, because it's a cool service we subscribe to that gives sort of real time, gives snapshots of what's happening. And of course, I talk about it, it's not going to load, but I was hoping it did. Well, I might have to move on if it doesn't load. Here we go. I appreciate your patience with technology. So this is a program called Trace Air, and what it does is you can do 360-degree videos. Oh, I have to share the view again. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
New share, right?
Yeah, you have to stop.
And then I have to. Do I have to stop share? No, it should go right over the other one, right?
Should go straight to the link.
It should go here. And I should be able to do that. I apologize. That's right. Here we go. Does that pull up? There we go. So I can cruise around in here, which is really cool. So here you have 2nd Avenue, and you can see from the project looking south, all of these buildings have been removed, and these are the pads. And this was from April 20th or April 11th. It was the last run of this video or this picture by the Trace Air company. But you can see, you can zoom in as well. But it's there's a group of buildings over here that it's in the future city, small city park, not the big dunes part. And we're eager to have the city of Marina um, finish the remainder of the blight removal in the dunes area. So actually put a request into the city to do that, the city council. But you can see, looking around, all of the activity, you can see all of what's happened there, which I thought was kind of interesting for everybody to see. So I need to stop share this, go back to the other, right?
Yep.
Where was I here? Okay, let me go back here. I actually go a few slides back, but that's okay. So residential, and these shows are very, particularly in phase 2 east, that area east of the Spring Hill Suites all the way over to California Avenue. You can see a variety of different housing product under construction as we speak, even more so than these pictures show. These are, you show a picture a week ago, a week forward from that, and many of these homes could be constructed. What's that? Those are done. Yes. Yeah.
Those are separate.
Right. So just kind of give you a flavor of that. On the north here, I could show you as well from the trace there, but I don't think I'll do that. But on the north, this was a little while ago when the infrastructure, looking at variety of work up there for getting that site ready. We'll be putting infrastructure in there, and very shortly now going up 2nd Avenue, or Del Monte extension, if you will, up north of there, in a street and utilities to be servicing the future hotels, future gas station, and future residential on that phase 2 north is what that's called, on the upper hill there above Target Emgen Parkway. This is Home 2 Suites. It was foggy today, sorry. But the Home 2 Suites is under construction, as you know, and it's moving forward. I believe they're anticipating to open in late August, September, I believe is what the plans are right now. The promenade infrastructure, these pictures, this one on the left is today, this one on the right is a little later. We do have a construction camera out there, which unfortunately I wasn't able to get the connection to click on here on a link, but soon we will have a website relative to the promenade development and marketing, if you will, of the commercial on the promenade sites that are there. And there'll be a construction camera in that website that you can link on, and you can cruise around, and you can move the camera. It's some really cool tools right now for development. So I want to talk a little bit about the promenade because it is such a significant portion of the dunes. As you know, it's one of the big amenities in this large master plan community. And here's some statistics on the side here of our development program coming forward. If you're not familiar with it, but there's 84 housing units, around 33,000 square feet of commercial, 3,900 square feet of commercial and live-work units, flats, townhomes, and live-work housing, condos for sale, ownership housing, specialty grocer and building A, who no, I cannot name, and the next one down are restaurants, specialty retail. We anticipate in D and E and G, F and B. And building C is the brass tap, and that's currently under construction. If you go out there and you see they poured their footings or their stem wall, and they'll soon be pouring their slab. Moving forward, they anticipate to be vertical here on the promenade in about 3 weeks. We'll start their framing. And Don, I don't know if you want me to mention on the residential, on the residential, then we anticipate it's about 2-3 weeks out, I believe. Oh, next week we're starting on the pads for a number of residential buildings. And we've already have underground utilities for the most part, water, sewer, drain. We don't have, joint trench with the future communications, gas, electric, and communications is coming. That's been graded and pad set, and for first number of buildings of residential and live work that are coming starting next week. So, so it's going to be real exciting as it comes forward. It also has a village square, as you can see in the middle there, and in front of the theater, and then also a linear park all the way down connecting to the traffic circle or roundabout at 9th Street. And then, of course, that linear park will continue all the way down to the business park at the south end of the project. I wanted to give a little preview, if you will, on 3D graphics of what the promenade will look like. These are based on CAD drawings, and these are the finishes and things that have been approved. Showing him this first entrance slide, sort of an aerial, if you were standing up off of 2nd Avenue, looking down the promenade, the 10th Street, all the way down to the theater. And I'll go fairly quickly here because there's quite a few slides, but you can see at the end of this street of 10th Street and this part of the promenade that there's a big mural that'll be on the theater, and we're hope to get final approval for that from the theater, from Cinemark and the owners of that property for large murals throughout the promenade, but particularly a large one there is where we're hopefully to get that approval. So we're excited about that. You can see it at nighttime. There's going to be quite a bit of lighting and string lighting across the streets. You can see the Dunes Promenade overhead sign, similar to, I don't know if you've been in the city of Salinas and seen the Salinas sign that goes over Main Street. This will be a little different, but kind of the same concept. Very cool, a vibrant, mixed use community. The artwork you see here, there will be artwork. This is not the exact artwork. This is a placeholder. And, but we will anticipate sculptures in addition to the murals. We will have sculptures throughout. So we really anticipate a vibrant community, a little bit at night here to illustrate the lighting. You can see the residential here on the right and on the street of 10th Street on the left. You can see that there's paseos, there's sidewalks, there's landscaping, trees. It's quite an effort and quite an amenity that will be coming. This is an expensive treatment relative to our development program. And I think the city of Marina is really lucky to be able to have Shea bring this forward. This is looking from, let's say, the Village Square up towards 2nd Avenue, looking east. This is one of the features we have here in this, are anticipating, are a lot of patio space in front of all of the potential restaurants. The Brass Tap will have that. They'll have both outdoor patio and outdoor gaming area. And most of the buildings, there's one in front of the grocer that cannot have a restaurant, but the rest of them were anticipated to have restaurants and other specialty retail. But in the restaurant spaces, particularly the end caps of those buildings, to have fairly significant outdoor seating and patios, which, as we know in this post-COVID world, is really important. We do realize it gets a little chilly in Marina at times, even in the summer. So there will be set up for heaters and other amenities like that. Oops. You can see a bit of a mural that's anticipated on a corner of a building there that's up near grocer. And this is a live work unit on the right, where the downstairs floor, 2-story, 3-story with rooftop decks, the 3-story with the bottom floor is commercial space, small commercial space, specifically for that use to provide specialty retail with the roll-up doors and other features that would be real exciting, ability to come out onto the sidewalk. You can kind of get an idea of what that might look like on the right there, looking east. Same kind of a picture here with commercial buildings. This is also, you can see the outdoor, the patios. You can see the patio there looking down towards, this is looking south. The linear park would be in the upper on the right-hand side there. And this is a village square on your right. And then the linear park beyond that to the south. So this is oriented south. You can see Century Theaters. You can see that mural there, which we hope the design stays in that kind of a concept, because that'd be very, very cool. You can see the pavilion there, which is a 2-sided fireplace. It'll also have fire pits. in front, as well as Brass Tap will have fire pits as well as part of inside their development. Then there's a lawn area that's there and sculptures, that wave type sculpture. Here gives you a little better picture of it too, where on your left is a commercial building for a restaurant. On your right is the theater. In between is the village square. Up in this corner, on the bottom right corner, is the Brass Tap. And looking down south, then down the village, across the village square down the linear park. And then on the right side is a commercial building. And then south of that is our live work buildings moving down as you move down the street, and then eventually townhome and condos, flats, and townhome buildings as you move down south on the linear park streets. A little bit at night to show you what this might be at nighttime, which will be anticipated to be a true, kind of public gathering place, particularly at night, with energy of restaurants and activities, potential entertainment even. You can kind of see the pop-up entertainment down here in the right corner. You can see what this pavilion sort of looks like as you go forward and you're looking east down 10th Street. There's another view of that as well. Gives you an idea of the square. The street would remain open between this village square and Cinemark at Cinemark's request or requirement. But it will be a very active and exciting place. We do anticipate an application will be coming into the city in several weeks or so for an office flex condo space. This is this is west of the theater. You can see the theater with a bird's eye view there, the current village square that's there now. And if you look, this area represents an acreage, about 6.5 acres. That's to the west of the theater. This development will come in front of the commission in the future. It is will anticipated to preserve the brick building as well that's out there. And that's for another day for another explanation there coming forward. Also in phase 2 then, because we talked about phase 1, this is really phase 2. You can see really the hotel resort complex on the hill, and that's Mr. Dodwell's project, the owner of the Spring Hill Suites, who is now the owner of that property moving forward with a hotel complex, maybe up to 3 hotels. There'll also be residential up on the hill as well in number 4. Also potential a gas station, service station in area 6 in a corner parcel there. Obviously the number 2, the Dunes Park coming forward. I mean, that is its future development, but as you know, those buildings have been removed, and we're very excited to see that project move forward as soon as it can with its designs and move forward with that large 20-acre city park that has, a multi-use sports complex, aquatic center, as it's recently gone through city council in concept design. Also phase 2 west, that's item number 3, that's 68 single family units. And those are ones that'll be starting here shortly in the infrastructure out there next week, in fact, and relating to First Avenue closure that Mr. Chairman, that you were talking about. And then item 4 in the north, eventually, again, that will be maybe our last phase of housing that will come forward. And then 8th Street, California Avenue. We've already done some improvements to 8th Street, a short portion, and then California Avenue as well. But we have, the city actually has additional improvements on the east of California and the rest of 8th Avenue down to California. The community, obviously, including the university, is very eager to open 8th Street. And we're currently in the process of negotiating a reimbursement agreement with the city to actually do those improvements and then get reimbursed. And then I talked about the gas station and car wash on the hill there coming forward. Phase 3 then, that's really down in the south part of the project. There's 255 single family housing units in that area number 1, probably broken up into a couple different phases of development there. And then you also have there's a large business park. It's 26 acres total. And we are actually in negotiations with a potential user of 10 acres on the corner, on the far southeast corner of the area 3 there. We're currently in negotiations there. And And then a neighborhood retail up on the corner, you'll see a big graded area out there that's next to the affordable housing complex and adjacent to Imgen and California. So there's just a lot of activity coming. And like I said, are illustrated in the first slide, one of the first slides, almost every corner of this project is under construction in some way or another, or planned very closely for the development in the near term. So with that, any questions? I know you had one question, Mr. Chairman, about First Avenue closure. That's not permanent. That's correct. It's not permanent. It's a temporary closure.
Please speak into the microphone,
Oh, sorry.
commissioners, everybody, but especially the commissioners.
Yeah, it's not permanent. It's a temporary. There's a variety of utility infrastructure work in that with various agencies. Don, do you want to address this?
So I know there's been some discussion about First Avenue closure. And in fact, when we closed it, we know that the commute patterns were disrupted a little bit. The issue is that people use First Avenue in the morning commute to bypass Highway 1 to get onto Highway 1 at Lightfighter. And they're in addition to safety issues, because there's some cars speeding down First Avenue in excess of 60 miles an hour just to get around the backup. So we had to close it. First Avenue gets reconstructed in its entirety from all the way from 8th Street down to DeVarty as part of our project. The first segment of that is what Doug was showing is what we call Phase 2 West, which is, if you think of that length of First Avenue and divide it up into thirds, the first third closest to 8th Street would be Phase 2 West. And then the Phase 3 will be reconstructed in two major segments. So First Avenue won't be open for through traffic probably for a couple of years in reality. But once Phase 3 infrastructure is finally complete, you'll be able to drive on it again from that whole distance, but it'll be a new roadway. It'll be a little bit wider. We're working with MST on their bus rapid transit system, was Surfline. Surfline. And so we're working with the city and MS and that group to adjust the roadway widths there to accommodate buses and other things. So there's a lot happening there. There's a high pressure gas line, as Doug was saying. So I'm probably giving you more than you want to know, but that's the answer with more detail.
I have a set of questions, but I'll hold them and let the other commissioners go first. Any start left to right? Any questions from the other commissioners at this point? Or I'll let you go ahead, Commissioner Wall.
Thank you. I just wanted to know if we could have access to your wonderful slides. And also thank you for this presentation.
Thank you. And yes, I will provide them to Guido and he can
Absolutely.
put them in the archive.
Yeah, as soon as we get them, we can share it with the commission.
Any other questions, Commissioner Walton? Okay. When you get the presentation, just because I know where this is eventually going to go, eventually at some point this is going to migrate through screenshots or not onto the both the next door site and the Facebook Marina community pages. And the last time we did the update on this, it was the they ended up being low resolution screenshots that opened up a lot more questions than answered.
Okay.
So just when we think about this, think that eventually these will get out, which isn't a big deal, but it's more just along the lines of resolution wise. Last time, a lot of people couldn't read the text on it.
Sure.
Absolutely. We can work with Doug to get the appropriate resolution. That's fine.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, thanks. Because this is really pertinent to most of the community. I want to know. Next up. Anybody else? Okay. I have some questions. Thank you for the clarification on first, because again, that's come up this week. I think the warning was there the day before.
Week, actually.
Yeah, but most people didn't see it, including me.
Right. It's easy to
You
miss.
did have a construction worker standing up there going like this. Well, first now it's pointing. He was very diligent and most people weren't paying attention. But so I appreciate you doing that. But getting it out there that it'll be a 2-year closure will help a lot to let people know that this is semi-permanent at least for now. And it makes sense during construction that
Right.
you just need to do that. There's a lot going on there. This second set of questions I have, and maybe can you pull up one of the slides that shows the overall footprint of all the phases? There we go. That works.
Oh, you want
That one.
this one here?
That one's perfect.
Yeah, that's the black is phase one, blue and the yellow's phase two, but you can see they're in multiple phases.
I want to use this more as just a starting point for
Sure.
discussion for questions. The first question I have is in section 5, where the
Mhm.
elementary school is supposed to go, knowing that the elementary school of MPUSD has at this point put that on hold probably indefinitely.
Correct.
And that you have temporary fencing up there right now. What are your plans to change that? Because now you're literally going to have, you don't want an industrial area sitting in the middle of your residential.
We don't, but that property is owned by MCWD. We have approached them in the past about potentially partnering with other types of land use there. We have not received a response yet from that. So there isn't our interest at this point from them. And hence the fence that went up around there it's an old abandoned buildings. Most of them are abandoned. Some of them are currently used by some MCWD staff. And of course they have offices across Imgen where the old FORA offices were, and that's where their offices as well as at the beach. And it would be very nice for them to relocate to consolidate their offices and have that be another future land use that is more compatible within the middle of a residential neighborhood than a maintenance yard. So it's a bit of a sore point, but we're hoping that something comes forward in the future. And we'd really like to see something else there. And I'm sure the homeowners would too.
Yeah, and mine is, I was wondering, eventually I would guess if this isn't rectified, that you would look at some type of more semi-permanent, visually appealing fence line that matches more what you're doing. But I will leave that to future discussions with you all because there's still a ways to go. Next question I have is in the same area right now. And this goes all the way back to 3rd Street and the no left turn that exists because it becomes a cut through because this is going to be an issue for the foreseeable future. The fact is that until the bridge is rebuilt years from now across 1 in the morning, traffic still backs up. And I am as guilty as anybody else right now. So traffic, we shut off the left turn lane because it was dangerous.
Right.
It's not necessarily as dangerous now because traffic flows have changed because the school start times have really affected things. But now you've got a second left turn lane. And as soon as we open California back up, you're really going to have three main cut through paths that all merge into
8th Street.
8th Street. And technically, if I circle back, when you get down 2 blocks from 2nd Avenue, cars make a left turn there, go down to the edge of the parking lot so they can cut if you see it in the morning. So what they do is they get down to the turn.
I've seen it.
Yeah, they get down to the turn there, they make the left so they can go up 2 more blocks and go down to the traffic, the other stop sign. How are you going to?
Well, I mean, this is an inch. I mean, we're very concerned about any cut through traffic through a neighborhood. And not only for the safety issues of turning left on 3rd off of Imgen, but for the cutting through of neighborhoods, which is not appropriate for commuter traffic to go through anybody's neighborhood. And California Avenue currently is not open for that for a variety of reasons, but one of them primarily because of the concern that people will cut down California and then they'll go right down 9th, so they'll go pick another street and go through neighborhoods. The plan and the specific plan that the traffic circulation was anticipated to utilize California down to 8th Street and 8th Street traffic and 8th Street to be improved in such a way that it handles a certain flow of traffic there as well as California, not to cut through neighborhoods. So the ultimate solution is to improve those streets and allow their function to happen. I may have mentioned earlier, we're sort of waiting for city approval to be able to advance those projects beyond our mean, we've put in our responsibility as a developer of what those improvements are. But these are city CIP projects and we're willing to move them forward and for the city with just some reasonable reimbursement schedule that makes sense to go forward with that. So it's kind of a bit in the city's hands now relative to that so that we, to get those improvements going, get them improved. I know the university very much wants to see 8th Street open. So traffic doesn't cut through the campus and goes back from Inner Garrison, through Inner Garrison, but comes down 8th Street. And that regards, there's always going to be some traffic issues as we're always contemplated on Imgen Parkway and on 2nd and so forth, because of the interchanges.
Okay.
And hopefully those in the future will be addressed.
And the reason I raise is because when you look at like 3rd, when that was built, it was built wider. If you look at 8th, it's narrow.
Well, the
And-
current configuration. is,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, but either way, you're not gonna be able to change 8th. The way it's currently built out, it's narrow, and to Nick's bias, who's like, it's perfectly fine driving through there in the morning. Literally, I have seen large vehicles that don't park up against the curb line completely in their mirror. And if they don't have their mirrors that fold up, literally that double yellow line down the middle is good, but it also can I've watched cars almost hit, and I've actually watched a couple times where cars have hit other cars' mirrors driving down that road. And it's not that they're going really fast. It's just that it's constricted and they're not slowing
Right.
down enough.
It's not an
Yeah,
art.
it's more just, I'm just curious
Sure.
about this thing. Because I don't think it's this cut through issue is not going to go away there.
And 8th Street is never meant to be an arterial street. It was meant to be more of a collector street and more of a street to come down. California is a little larger. But 2nd Avenue as well, being able to once it's fully improved and going down. But point well taken about future traffic. Yes.
Moving down 8th Street to 2nd and then hanging a right and coming back to the entrance to the promenade. So right now on 10th, I think it would be 10, I think it's probably 10th Street.
10th Street and is the promenade street.
Right.
There will be a signal there at 10th and 2nd.
That'll be interesting to watch. Right now, the challenge, and this is what I'm wondering down the road, and this again, maybe goes back to a bigger question,
Sure.
which will be my maybe follow on. I may be asking this backwards. Right now, we've got another transportation. This is a congestion personal, I'm in a hurry issue. Cars back all the way up in the morning. Again, it's only for an hour
Right.
at most. They back all the way up to Imgen. And so what people do is they get in the right lane and they drive all the way up to where it says right turn only into 10th Street, which is going to be the promenade. And regardless of how things go, again, for the next few years, that situation is still going to exist and not go away. Putting a white line down there says right turn only, even if there's a traffic light there, it's not going to stop people from speeding up the right-hand side. And really with the traffic light, I almost think it's going to be, this is something maybe back to the city to pass on. Right now with a stop sign, people who pass up on that right lane that says right turn only, at least they still have to stop. If there is a traffic light there and that traffic is still going through it, they're going to see a green light and they will just blow right through the right turn only and go straight. And that could turn into a bigger safety transportation issue.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I don't think this isn't necessarily your issue. This is,
Right.
it's sitting in the middle of your development.
Right.
But that is one that I see daily because I commute through there every
Sure.
morning.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
So, yeah, these are all good, really good points. At 10th Street on 2nd Avenue, there's a transition that happens at that point from north of 10th Street on 2nd, there is no on-street bike lane.
Right.
Okay, but at 10th Street, there starts an on-street bike lane headed south. And so there's a transition that happens right at that intersection. And so, there's not a lot that can be done to change that lane orientation without impacting bike lanes, which I don't think anybody wants to do. And what you're bringing up is a good point. At some point, some of these issues become enforcement issues where people are going to have to get tickets for, blowing through stoplights or, driving in the bike lane where there's no traffic allowed or, other things like that. And there will be adjustment times. I mean, the other thing we realize with large developments like this, especially when traffic is impacted, commute traffic, is it takes a while for people to adjust. And, the issue with Second Avenue traffic right now is that it saves commuters time to cut through the way, Chair Woodson or Vice Chair Woodson is describing. One of the things that will happen as the dunes develops is there's going to be more people living there, right? There's going to be more traffic, more cars, more people living there. And there's sort of my hope, and this might be Pollyanna. If it is, I apologize, that, those cut through times will diminish for commuters, and there will be a motivation or an incentive for them to stay in the normal commute lane on Imgen Parkway more, because they're not going to be saving as much time cutting through the neighborhoods or cutting through the community when there's just more traffic there because people live there. The other thing too is that a lot of the streets that have been designed in the dunes, and this goes way back to 2005 when the specific plan was approved, those streets like 8th Street that we were talking about is narrow on purpose, right? And the idea is to create a traffic calming situation where people don't feel as safe going as fast, or they shouldn't, and the prudent driver should slow down. To the degree that doesn't happen, then it becomes an enforcement issue that we have to resolve with, police and other things. So that's the general concept and the way some of this works. And I know there's a lot of intricacy. Back in 2005, when the EIR was approved, there were, traffic studies, and then we've updated those studies as we've gone. So a lot of these street sections and the way this all works has been pretty thoroughly vetted. And it's a little bit hard when you're mid-stride, right? When the community is not quite done. But I believe that when it's finally finished and everything's functioning the way it should, things will work well. So we're hopefully that gives you some confidence. I don't know. Maybe
That
not.
does. I just think it's been awful long. And there are no good solutions to this. This is
Right.
going until they get the choke point, which is the bridge and the on-ramp fixed. This is going to be a problem in this area, and there are always going to be problems. And mine is more just from a developer perspective, because to your point, you're going to widen and bring First Avenue more up to a transit code for width. What that's really going to do is it's going to take that 50 mile an hour, watching what happens on Imgen already. And that's going to turn that into a thoroughfare. So I'm not sure if it will cut the timeline and cut commuters back, because once people figure it out, it will slowly expand.
Right.
I mean, and anyway, different conversation. Next one, as I'm moving, because I'm kind of moving into the development here.
Sure.
As we get in, right now, you have a theater, you have a lot of the parking that is eventually going to be replaced with office space. That's around the theater.
No, the theater parking will remain what
So-
they currently have,
Okay.
and then the office will have its own parking.
Okay. And I guess mine was having seen up what's happened, and this is, maybe there's just no issue, and maybe we'll just park in the regional retail parking area and you just have an overflow. I'm assuming that over time, and this is just a thought, that as growth goes, as usage goes up with the new facilities and new bars and all these things come to fruition, that people end up, there isn't enough parking space. And I'm to be able to satisfy all the needs with all the restaurants and bars. And I look as the example of what happens many times during the day right now on the current kind of restaurant row on the other side, where that parking lot is completely full. And again, I don't think there's not it's more just a comment. I'm assuming then that really they'll just have to go into where the Best Buy and that regional parking is, and they'll just have to walk a massive 200 feet instead of 20 feet.
We are planned, all of this is planned with sufficient parking, and what actual parking standards are and what people actually do. Obviously in the quick serve restaurant site there where the Starbucks and all of that is, it gets really tight at times. There was a request, there was a requirement to up the amount of square footage in that site with a second story and an expansion without additional parking. So it did contribute. It's very vibrant, which is great, but it has contributed. The promenade is designed very specifically understanding those traffic issues and building sufficient parking throughout. But you're right. You have this large parking area that's 200 feet away that if things got into overflow because of demand or whatever beyond anticipated parking standards, that is available as well. So I think we feel pretty comfortable. In the end, there's sufficient parking for all the uses.
Next one, this is more just, I don't know the answer to this. The lighting and once the buildings are all done in the promenade area, does the lighting, like the string lighting you're gonna have across the street, will that stay with the developer for maintenance, or does that cycle back to the city and the city takes over responsibility because that would be considered part of the right of way?
I was only checking because Don and I spend a lot of our time figuring out the spider web of responsibilities in a promenade like that, where you have commercial owners association, residential owners HOA, who shares what, who pays for what, shares for what costs. The city's responsibility is in the community facilities district, which is a part of the dunes, a CFD that is collected on the property tax that they paid into, that everybody pays in for the maintenance of the facilities. The homeowners and business owners pay for, not the city's general fund, not the city. The city maintains it. They use those resources though. So the project definitely pays for its own maintenance, but those are the streets, the city street lights, and the drainage under the streets. That's what's paid for in essentially the public right of way. For the city under that CFD, the other improvements are either paid, landscaping, lighting, and others are either paid for by the commercial association or by the residential association. And there's also cost sharing agreements between the two to make that happen. So in the end, all of that is all figured out in this just spider web exhibit of who does what in what corner and who picks up that meter over here and who does this and who does that, and all documented and approved and such. But I think you should feel comfortable that all of that is taken care of. And it's, though the city may have the responsibility at the end of the day for the streets, that there's resources that come from the whole development to pay for those maintenance of the streets.
I think my concern is more to make sure that the city takes responsibility and make sure that this great image, that's visual image of being out there, actually has the staffing to be able to support that and provide that maintenance. So having the money coming into the CFD, I understand how that works. It's just, this is more of a follow on. I just wanted to,
Sure.
I thought that was how it would work, but I wanted to make sure.
Sure.
Next one's for the city council for me to ask next time they have a meeting. And that's it. Okay, that's it. I'm done.
Okay.
I've asked enough questions. Anybody else at this point have any questions?
So
Thank you so much for the presentation. I mean, I
thank
really
you.
do appreciate you taking the time and also
Sure.
humoring my questions.
No problem. Thank you for the great questions and for your time tonight.
So this is the second year Doug's done this, and we're just trying to make this an annual kind of check-in with the commission, just so you guys can inform the commission of what's coming up. And so we appreciate you taking out the time,
Sure.
Don and Doug. And so thank you.
Thank you. Be happy to do so. As you can see, there's a lot of exciting things coming. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
I think having this set up for all the major developments as we go forward.
Yeah, I was actually thinking that we just had Sea Haven come before you guys. So probably wouldn't hurt to have the Sea Haven folks check in maybe 3 to 6 months from now. And I'm looking at Nick because he's our point person for Sea Haven. So
Okay, next up on the agenda is our public hearings. We have, I think, 2 main items on our public hearings today. For one's a conditional use permit and one is the housing amendment. Start with the conditional use permit.
Sounds good. Can you guys all hear me okay? I am the project planner for this. Take care, guys. This is excuse me. This is a conditional use permit for the property at 235 Rhine-Dollar Avenue here in Marina. This is the project location. It's right off of Del Monte on Rhine-Dollar, on the corner of Rhine-Dollar and Sunset Avenue. Existing site is a mixed use building. with office on the ground floor, 2/3 of the ground floor, and then 1/3 of the ground floor has a church, an assembly use. And then the second floor has permitted 2 office spaces and 2 residential dwelling units. At some point, the office spaces were illegally, unpermittedly, they didn't have a permit. Without a permit, were converted to residential units. Pardon my misspeak. So this is what's actually there right now, which is four dwelling units. And these were not built to code. So we discovered this at some point last year. Our building official and myself went out to the site, walked the site with the property owner, the new property owner, and noted the violations and issued him a notice that he needed to bring this up to code and get this legalized or return it back to office. So the property owner chose to get it permitted, which is within his right. So the proposal is to convert one of the office spaces to a full dwelling unit. The 4th dwelling unit will be then converted to an accessory dwelling unit, which is permitted under our ordinances. That's not part of this permit in front of you today. That's just a note for you to know that this will be eventually legalized fully as 4 dwelling units, which helps our numbers having more residential dwelling units. It fits within the character of this neighborhood. There's multifamily across the street, down the street. In this area, there's a lot of multifamily. There's already multifamily on this site, so it's within the same character of this site. Further within the zoning district, residential dwellings are allowed on the 2nd floor in this district. They're not allowed on the 1st floor at this time. So this is the maximum amount of dwelling units they can add within the building at this time. This is fully meets all zoning codes. It meets parking requirements. I think they're actually a little over parked at this point. I think they have 1 extra parking space when I did the math. So everything is consistent, compliant with the code. This is just a rundown of the development standards. This is in the staff report, breaks it down by what they're requesting and what's proposed and what the standards are and if it's compliant or not. So everything is fully compliant with all the different standards. So staff is recommending that you adopt a resolution approving this conditional use permit to legalize, to permit 1 dwelling unit to the existing mixed-use building at this location at 235 Rhine Avenue, as proposed, subject to findings and conditions of approval. And staff has found that this is exempt under CEQA for existing facilities, as well as new construction and conversion of small structures. So turn it back to the vice chair if there's any questions. Staff.
Open it up to any of the commissioners for questions.
So mine is out of curiosity. So ADU is not counted as a unit there.
It's not before the planning commission. Per state law, we're not allowed to have a discretionary permit for an accessory dwelling unit. Those are allowed by right with a building permit. So it's just a note to the planning commission to let you know that's how they're going to legalize the 4th unit. Under our code, you're allowed to you're permitted, property owners are permitted to create 25% of their existing units into accessory dwelling units. So
For
for
multifamily.
multifamily, correct, yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
under our ADU ordinance law, he's permitted to do this conversion in concert with this conditional use.
By right, with really no input from the commission.
Yeah.
So I think Nick's just making that note to say, we're just making you aware of that. This is part of the package, but under state law, the commission is preempted on this issue by state law. And ADUs are not subject to a public hearing, which you're at a public hearing right now.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, because there were, unit three and, third unit and fourth unit.
Right.
Seem to be authorized, but in the, agenda,
Right.
only mentioned one unit.
Right.
Right, that was, I wanted to clear that up because the architect did design it showing the fourth unit as an ADU. So just to clarify that for you.
Because it could be confusing, in the agenda and resolution, when you just say third unit, on the second floor is authorized. Whereas in the picture,
Right,
Right. Right.
there's four.
Right. That makes
Yeah.
sense. That makes sense.
yeah.
So really to sum it up, we're really here, there was a series of events in terms of what happened and we're here. Our primary goal as a community development department is safety, to keep the public safety, to keep housing safe. And so however it transpired, the applicant is working with us. We are trying to actively legalize the units to make them safe and habitable. And your part of that process is to officially recognize the units, and then the applicant will work with us to get building permits to officially make the units habitable and safe. So that's really the goal for tonight, just to hopefully get an approval and so we can continue to work with the applicant to make them habitable and safe. So
And in the proposed floor plan, I noticed that the bedrooms that exist now, the walls were kind of removed with some of the units. Was there a reason behind this? Or was it the owner?
Yeah, so the way it was previously constructed, let me show it back in
share.
really quickly. Let me share the screen again. So the unpermitted floor plan, if you look on your screens, it shows bedrooms without windows. And so per building code, it's a requirement to have two means of egress for any bedroom, which for anyone sleeps in. So like, for instance, you cannot sleep in a closet under California Universal Building Code. And so currently there's a handful of, or a couple different bedrooms that don't actually have windows. So under building code and fire code, this wouldn't be permitted to exist. And so when you look then at the proposed floor plan, you see that they're removing some bedrooms in some of the units and adding maybe one or two windows just to make sure that there's secondary means of egress. I will note that these are architectural plans, not approved by our building official or our fire marshal. So if you approve this conditional use permit, the next step would be for them to prepare actual construction drawings, and then that would be reviewed by our building official and our fire chief to make sure that they're safe for habitation. So before anyone occupies these units, all four of them will be up to code and safe, like Guido said. So our main goal here is to make sure that all the units are safe for people that are going to eventually live in them and up to code. So.
Commissioner Hurd, do you have any other questions? Commissioner Walton?
I forgot my question. Let me just, I'm sorry. So I was thinking about, okay, give me a second. I was so wrapped up in what we were just talking about.
The ADUs perhaps?
No,
No.
so the ADU, the windows, I hadn't known about that. And now I'm just you ever just learn something and whatever was in your head is gone now? That's what I'm at.
Happens all the time.
Yeah, thank you. You talked about the traffic. I had a question about that, but you addressed it, or the parking at least. I might not have a question. It has gone. So if it comes back, I'll send an email.
And that's fine. And even after the hearing, we can certainly address whatever questions pop in your head.
I
So-
appreciate it. Thank you.
That happens to me a lot. So that was actually kind of my question going into this on the safety, just the overall safety components of this right now. So the first one is everything vacant there at the moment because these were built not the code. So he had to have the residents move out. So right now everything is vacant there.
That's correct. I mean, this property was for sale 2 years ago or so.
Right.
So maybe a little less than 2 years ago. So it was bought empty. It's remained empty when we, I believe it's remained empty. when the building official and myself realized that there was unpermitted construction up there, we right away did an inspection and we informed the owner that they can't have anyone occupy any of the units. Because we didn't know what's happened to the units since the last approval. So there was a conditional use permit for the church. They modified the church a little bit about I think in 2017. Should be in the staff report, but so whenever we have any sort of notice of any unpermitted construction, our first priority is to inspect it and make sure it's safe and legal. And if it hasn't been permitted, then we go through the process that we've gone through with this property. So yeah, it remains vacant.
And then the only other question I had was the first floor, if I understand it right, that has to be commercial, second floor is residential. And so the commercial is everything is, because again, it was a church at one point.
Mhm.
And then when they sold it, I believe, I think Scudder was out of there for a while, still is, using that, roofing. So-
They've vacated the
Okay.
office uses. They were the original owners of the property.
Right.
There is a church use occupying the downstairs assembly use space, but I don't believe the offices are occupied at this time.
So the downstairs will say commercial at this point and it's staying at the same configuration that it's currently under.
Correct.
I don't have any other questions. Any other commissioners? Did you remember?
I did, thank you. So I was wondering if there were any other buildings that are being used this way or have non-permitted uses happening, and how do we discourage this from happening in our future?
So maybe Guido wants to respond to that.
Unfortunately, people do things all the time and we have only a code officer for one day a week. The city council is graciously offering more code enforcement resources, so we might be a little bit more proactive in our approach. So to answer your first question, there possibly could be some in terms of discouragement. Most cities, including Marina, for code enforcement is the goal is compliance and the goal is safety. We do actively work with customers to get them to compliance, so you're part of that process. If an applicant, a property owner, a tenant, we're not seeing significant progress on code enforcement, we do have a code enforcement hearing officer. We do have fines we can issue. We do have administrative citations we can issue. That's always the second and third approach, because it's not as collaborative approach we would normally take. But yes, we always have the ability to issue fines, issue administrative orders, and declare things public nuisances. So that's the second part of your question.
Thank you.
Okay, I think at this point, there are no other comments. Would anybody like to make a motion? And, public comment. Yeah, sorry, we do have guests online. I'm gonna open it up for public comment who are here in hybrid.
I believe that's
So we do have the applicant, Charles, on. I've allowed him to speak if he wants to say anything.
That's not.
I'm fine, thank you.
Thanks, Charles.
Thanks. Anybody else from the public have a comment? The one attendee, he has nothing. It's Charles.
One attendee, that's it.
One, well, but however, Councilman Fiala is sitting out there. also.
Yeah, but she's here as the liaison. Her role is to still listen in. Yeah.
Say hi.
She could say hi if she wants to. That's sure.
She's working. This is what she does. She was
Sure.
on the planning commission at one point. She comes here and works.
Right.
So it's okay. Welcome, Kathy. So now can I make now can we, if
Please
somebody would like to
proceed. Please
make a
proceed.
motion?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I will make the motion. I move to adopt resolution 23, approving the conditional use permit number CUP 23-01 to add one dwelling unit to the existing mixed-use building located at 235 Randall Avenue. Parentheses APN 032 -312 -025 close parentheses as proposed subject to findings. Conditions of approval in class 1, set 15301 and class 3, section 15303 require some exemptions for existing facilities and new construction and conversion of small structures respectively.
Do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second that.
Can we take?
Absolutely.
You okay, me like I missed something? Can we take-
Chair Woodson,
Yes.
Commissioner Herr, Commissioner St. John,
Yes.
Commissioner Walton,
Yes.
Commissioner Jacobson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Charles, for attending. Okay, the second item that we have on the public hearing tonight is the housing amendments. Allison, you're gonna present that?
Thank you.
Good evening, commissioners, member of the public who may or may not still be on. I'm Allison Hunter, Planning Manager, and I'll be presenting this item on a few new housing-related zoning ordinance amendments. Some of these will look familiar to you because we brought them to you for different reasons not too long ago. Let's see. Okay.
Here we go.
So the items we'll be talking about tonight have to do with employee housing, supportive housing, reasonable accommodation, and density bonus. And the first item is employee housing. So the California Employee Housing Act requires that housing for 6 or fewer employees shall be considered a single-family residential use in all zoning districts that allow this use as a principally permitted use. So in Marina, these districts are the R1, R2, and R3 zones. The amendment proposes to add a new section to the code and the definitions section of the code and a new subsections to 1706, 1708, and 1710. Those are the R1, R2, R3 zoning districts. And by undertaking this amendment, we will be yet another step closer to implementing some of the programs, specifically program 3.2 of the city's 5th cycle housing element, which I think Guido's maybe going to make an exciting announcement about later on tonight. That program specifically included several of these amendments that we've been bringing to you, including those pertaining to transitional supportive housing, this employee housing, and density bonus updates. The next item is supportive housing. This one is very simple. It's simply codifying the deadlines that the city is subject to under this government code 65653B. And we are already subject to these timeframes by state law. It's just putting it in our code, so there's no confusion and everybody knows what, cards we're playing with, and it's very clear. So no other changes to the supportive housing ordinance are requested at this time. Also, your planning commission and the city council very recently adopted a brand new reasonable accommodation ordinance, which did not exist in the Marina Code before. We're asking the commission to make a recommendation to the council on tonight is simply the removal of the subjective language that was in our reasonable accommodation and replace it with objective language. You'll be familiar with those terms because we're undergoing our objective design standards right now. And the state legislature in the adoption of dozens and dozens of these housing bills is taking out basically all subjectivity and discretion from local jurisdictional review. So everything is becoming prescriptive, objective, no more. Does it fit with the character of the neighborhood? You know, that all of that is going away for better or worse. It's coming down to us from the state. Lastly, we're proposing to repeal our existing density bonus ordinance and replace it entirely with a reference to state density bonus law. This is becoming more and more common in jurisdictions throughout the state, especially relating to housing items, because the state laws are changing so rapidly that many jurisdictions are like, fine, we'll just get rid of ours and adopt by reference the state law. That way, the city staff and all the developers just go to one place. We always will refer to state law in our zoning code, and that's all there is to it. And nobody is confused by what rules may pertain to a specific project. So in your staff report, you have several findings for zoning and general plan consistency. We're recommending you find a two CEQA exemptions under 15060C2 and 15061B3 of the CEQA guidelines. These are the CEQA exemptions pertaining to there's no reasonable foreseeable impact to the environment by the adoption of these amendments. And we recommend that you adopt Planning Commission resolution that moves these on to the City Council as described in your action with the findings and 2 CEQA exemptions as noted. And that is the conclusion of my report. I am available for any questions that you might have.
Any commissioners have any questions? Yes, Commissioner Wall.
Thank you. I was wondering if you could speak about, with respect to density bonuses and water.
And water in terms of,
Future water availability, as we build out. And I'm not, maybe it's a misplaced question, but if we're doing density bonuses, to me, that means that we're gonna increase with respect to density. More people would require more water. So I'm wondering with respect to MCWD, where, if you could speak to.
Yeah. so they did a water master plan 2 years ago, demonstrating that we have enough water for this general plan cycle. And then as part of this new general plan update, there will be a SB 610 water supply assessment. We have to do that as part of the general plan to demonstrate we have adequate water. And then in terms of density bonus, if you qualify, you get those units. So it's kind of 2 separate buckets. And that's part of what Allison's referencing tonight is in the last 4 years, the density bonus law has changed every single legislative cycle. And so instead of dragging you guys down here for a meeting where we basically have to say, hey, we have to change the code because the state law changed again, we're trying to be proactive because we have such a small staff and say, let's just adopt this and just say, go look at the state law because we might as well just write our density bonus ordinance and pencil at this point because it keeps changing. So that's really what we're trying to do is just say, please adopt by reference. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments? I have one question, and I think it's more of a generic one that I think I've asked before, which is if we go back and we're citing the state reference moving forward, which is logical and makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a good place that when an applicant is going to come in and start looking at this, they're immediately going to look at that and say, okay, I'm going to go there. But knowing that with the ever-changing requirements, that we have a statement that is saying, okay, you are going to meet the requirements as of the time when you apply. And that you don't have to constantly change your design as you go through the process. So if it takes 2 years and we've gone through 3 iterative changes at the state in that time period, they still have to, which version do they have to meet?
You can answer that or you can.
We do have specific rules under these other state laws. I believe, SB 330 does explicitly say that once a project is deemed complete, that is the project moving forward within these prescribed timeframes. So that's one of the state laws we have to adhere to it, along with all the timeframes that fall into that.
Okay. And I don't know if it's a big deal because ultimately they would still be coming to you all to ask questions and you would clarify that. They would ask that clarifying question in the first place.
That's correct.
Could you explain to me a little more, about employee housing? That was mentioned in the project analysis first paragraph, because in the middle it says no. So employee housing will not be, shall not be included in the definition of boarding house, blah, blah, blah. And no conditional use permit, joining variance or other joining clearance shall be required of employee housing. That's of 6 or fewer employees. That is not required for family dwelling, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So could you elaborate a little more?
Sure. So typically, these references are outdated, like many jurisdiction zoning codes are. Frequently, a zoning code has these use types like rooming house, dormitory, boarding house, and frequently those housing types require a use permit. And this Employee Housing Act specifically says that if you have 6 or fewer employees, you handle that as a single family residence. So it's allowed by right in a single family residential zone or the zoning districts in the city that allow single family residences by right. So you do not any longer have to take them through that conditional use permit process that's required still for those other rooming house, boarding house, dormitory type uses.
Any other comments or questions? Yeah, I believe at this point we have to make a recommendation for adoption of the ordinances. Would somebody like to make that? And if you don't have it in front of you, I can.
Oh, public hearing
Public comment.
for the one person or
I
however.
don't believe is there anybody still here? I don't believe there is.
Let
I
me
believe Charles left.
double check. It says Marina Control. Oh, that's the AMP, right? Marina Control.
Yes.
Yeah, there are no members, but okay. Yeah, you're fine.
But open and close for the record, please.
Open for public comment.
Yes,
Receive none.
and close
Okay,
public.
no close for public comment since there is nobody
So there
here
we go.
anymore. It's very depressing. I'm gonna pay people to come. Just fill the seats one
Just to
night.
fill the seat.
Housing
Build-
amendments are notoriously popular, so I'm
Right.
really surprised no one's here.
Right. So
I'd like to move on and make the motion.
Go ahead, please go ahead and make the
Could you put
Commissioner
it on
St.
the-
John.
Yeah, could you put it on the screen and?
Sure.
I got it.
Yes.
I gave it to him.
Put it on the screen. I forgot my
Got
glasses.
it.
there you go.
There you go.
Okay, I move to adopt Planning Commission Resolution 2023 recommending that the city council adopt the proposed Marina Municipal Code amendments to section 17.04, 17.06, 17.08, 17.10, 17.45, and repealing and replacing sections 17.48, 0.040, and 0.050 with adoption by reference of the state density bonus law and adding 17.51 employee housing based on findings and classes 1506 C2 and 15061B3 CEQA exemptions.
Do we have a second?
I say.
For a second, can you take a roll call vote? please?
Chair Woodson,
Yes.
Commissioner Herr.
Yes.
Commissioner Rana. Commissioner St. John,
Yes.
Commissioner Walton,
Yes.
Commissioner Jacobson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thanks.
So before we get, so these type of actions, you know, like we said, there's nobody in the audience, right? You might think it's a boring item, but all the work that you guys did on the affordable housing overlay that the council adopted in February, I packaged all that up and sent it to the state. And then just today at 3 o'clock, I got a letter from the state saying our previous housing element had been officially certified. And that has major implications for you as a resident, because now Brian, our public works director, can now apply for state transportation grants to fix your potholes, the roads, all the stuff that Brian does for public works. We are now, there was a thing called the builder's remedy, where if you don't have a certified housing element, somebody could walk through the permit center and say, I want 500 units right across the street from your house. And we would have very little ability to stop them because we didn't have a certified housing element. So like I said, some of the work that we bring before you, you might not see the people and people might not be all riled up like the general plan, but this stuff has implications. And even the stuff tonight, Alice and I are trying to clean up some of the stuff that was, you know, maybe wasn't done for whatever reason. And so, yeah, just don't think your work is insignificant. So, yeah. So.
That is actually really good news. That they came back pretty much with very few comments, which we're able to clear
Now
up.
that's the 5th cycle. You guys are going to be looking at the 6th cycle in the next couple months. So,
But
so
there
a
are-
little bit of work to do, but trying to get us
There's-
caught up. So
There are still a lot of communities that are still working on getting their 5th cycle submitted.
exactly.
So this is a big achievement for us.
So this cycle, the 6th, so you did 5th cycle, we're good there. 6th cycle, if I can get it adopted by December, will go from 2023 till 2031,
They're 8-year cycles.
8-year cycles.
Okay. Next up is action items. I do not believe we have any action items that came up during the meeting. So moving on, we have 2 informational items. One, eligibility for California disaster assistance, and then update on general plan and the flyer that I'm assuming also is the little tag in front of us.
Yes, I can provide these updates for the commission and the public. So a few weeks ago, the planning commission and upon the planning commission's recommendation to the city council, you adopted a somewhat minor general plan amendment. It was an amendment to the safety section of the general plan, the 2000 general plan, that added specific language pertaining to Assembly Bill 2140. And through this amendment, it allows the city to qualify for California Office of Emergency Services and FEMA federal funding for disaster planning and cleanup funds. So it's a pretty big deal. It's another, one of these things that might not seem very exciting, but to have it documented in our guiding documents is very important, and it qualifies us for disaster funding. So that's pretty major. The letter was included in your packet from Cal OES.
Yeah, and as the Pajaro Valley, it's, shows that being prepared for this stuff is absolutely mission critical, and having these administrative things in place gives the fire chief the ability to quickly get the funds that he needs to deal with, if there is a potential disaster in your community. So
Not
We don't have
this
little
particular funding source.
Thank you.
And then the second item is yes, in front of you, you have a little stack of general plan update postcards to hand out to your friends and neighbors. Also a couple of fancy general plan update pens. So we do have 2 workshops coming up on the general plan update. The first one is May 4th. That's a virtual meeting in the evening. I believe the invitation info is on those postcards. And then our second meeting, May 20th, will be here in the council chamber in person with the consultant from 10 to 12. So that will be an in-person kind of, workshop looking more at existing conditions and things like that as we keep progressing through the general plan update and seeking input from the public. So those postcards there you have, please hand them out, please attend, as public to our outreach opportunities. The link to our dedicated general plan update website is on the postcard. That's where we'll keep, all fun activities. We'll update that regularly.
And I'm assuming our contractor will be loading this when they had the public meeting with the other committee,
The GPAC.
the GPAC. Since they're doing the community outreach side, they'll be the ones that load this onto all the other multiple channels and social media and et cetera.
Well, we're loading on to like the social media, our City of Marina pages on Nextdoor and Facebook,
Okay.
and they're loading on to this independent website that they've created just for the general plan update.
Thanks. Any other comments from the commission? Yes. All right, next up, we have staff updates.
You got the update for the dunes today. I think the commission, there was an interest in maybe having Sea Haven come back, so maybe 2 to 3 months from now. Marina Station, we're making a lot of progress on getting an affordable housing agreement through. And what else? Oh, coming up, housing elements 6th cycle. You guys will be seeing the draft document in the next 30 or so days. And the downtown plan, I'm making a lot of progress on getting some comments back from the city manager. You guys will also be seeing that in the next 30 or 45 days.
I had a question about that. Care of that. I have one other question, and it's more because I just don't know the answer. SB 684, which I think was this year, that deals with new housing for middle income and communities of color and streamlining the housing process. Just don't know where that stands.
SB 6, I'd have to look that one up. I don't know that one off
Because
the top of my head.
Because there are 100 different housing
Yeah,
Yeah.
things that
there
come
are
up.
many.
Somebody, when we were talking about this a week and a half ago, they were asking about something, and I had to look it up because I didn't know.
I can certainly do some research and just prepare a quick memo for the benefit of the rest of the commission. When the state legislature comes back, they introduce literally hundreds of bills. And then by like March or April, they have to make it out of committee. And that's like the first cut. And then if they make it out of committee, then they have to go to, various the fiscal committee, whatever. And then June 30th is when they're supposed to have the end of the legislative session. And then the governor signs the stuff by September 30th. So for planners, I do share with the staff. It starts off with probably about 200 bills in the American Planning Association hot bill list. And then it kind of slowly gets whittled down to about 20 or 30. And then the governor signs however many. So, and to answer your question, we will definitely research and bring back, but there are hundreds of bills that so we do kind of wait a little bit more towards the end. And then we go to training as a staff, and then we share with you guys kind of the top, maybe 5 or 10. That's generally how we've been working it. But yeah, we can definitely
That's
research
fine.
that one.
And if it isn't appropriate, then it just waits, and we can do that too.
So
Maybe there needs to be like a Schoolhouse Rock modern version.
So-
How California
Yeah.
bill is approved.
yeah, it's
Except it might not be a song, it might be an epic.
yeah.
Hey, I believe, agenda. I
if it is in closed session like what Doc did today with the doing, when Sea Haven comes back, well, I mean, do, Richard and I still have to recuse ourselves?
Well, let's see. I could talk with, if it's an informational item and you're not taking action, I'll check with the city attorney. That might be a good question to ask. Yeah, so let me follow up, but yeah, Sea Haven, kind of what, for Commissioner her and Richard St. John. Yeah, it would definitely be a no-no if, there's an actual specific action you're taking, right? But if it's just informational, yeah, but I can certainly check.
And the 3 items. Correspondence, any, employees, there's anything we have to deal with, can shut it
No.
off.
Nope.
Major project updates, I think we just did that, so.
Yeah.
Double tapping that, and, oh, wait, that leads to number 14, which is adjournment night. Any other comments from the commissioners? Yeah.
Yeah, you get to use the
I
gavel.
will adjourn the meeting at this point.
Thank you.